March 17, 2026, 6:30 a.m., Los Angeles International Airport. The sun was just beginning to rise over LAX as I adjusted my sunglasses and exhaled. Another long shift, another high-profile client on a flight across the Atlantic. The job had gone smoothly: escort to the airport, VIP lounge security check, and then a firm handshake before watching the jet disappear into the morning sky. I wasn't assigned to his security detail beyond this point, so my work was done. I had been in the private security business for nearly a decade now. Former Marine, a few years in law enforcement, and now a quiet, well-paying gig protecting those who could afford it. I kept my head down, did my job, and made sure my weapons were clean and my instincts sharp. Now, I just wanted a break. The plan was simple: drive to my place in the hills outside the city, crack open a beer, and sleep for 12 hours straight. But fate had other plans. Traffic was already a nightmare, even for LA standards. At first, it just looked like the usual morning congestion, but as I weaved through lanes, I started noticing the erratic driving. People were honking, some abandoning their cars altogether. Then came the first real sign that something was wrong. A man in a business suit ran into the middle of the freeway, his arms flailing. His shirt was torn, his face covered in blood. He slammed his fist against the hood of a Tesla, screaming at the driver inside. Before I could react, a second figure, a woman, or what used to be one, pounced on him from behind. She was feral. Her movements were unnatural, jerky but fast. She sank her teeth into his neck, tearing into him like a starving animal. The man's screams cut through the noise of the traffic, but they didn't last long. I had seen some shit in my time, but nothing like this. Instinct took over. I reached for the Glock 19 holstered inside my jacket and checked my surroundings. People were running now, abandoning their cars. The freeway was turning into a war zone. I needed to get off the road. Now, I veered onto the shoulder, cutting through an emergency lane, and took an exit that led to a side street. The city was already unraveling. Sirens blared in every direction, helicopters hovered above, and plumes of black smoke rose from different parts of LA. I flipped the radio on. Unclear what's causing the violent attacks, but authorities are urging residents to remain indoors and avoid contact with individuals exhibiting erratic behavior. Great. Just great. I wasn't waiting around for things to get worse. I had food, water, and enough ammunition at my country house to hold out for weeks if needed. I just had to make it there. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Time to disappear. I lived alone. Always had. It wasn't that I didn't want a family, a relationship, or some kind of connection. I just never made time for it. My work came first, and I liked it that way. Private security wasn't just a job. It was a lifestyle. You stayed sharp, kept moving, and never got too comfortable. The moment you let your guard down, that's when things went sideways. Besides, I'd seen what relationships looked like in my line of work. Bodyguards pulling double shifts to pay for houses they barely slept in. Kids who only recognized their fathers through FaceTime. No thanks. The only real friend I had was Emily. We met years ago, back when I worked high-risk contracts overseas, and she was still grinding through med school. Somehow, through all the late-night calls and near misses, we stayed in touch. She was one of the few people I trusted. The kind of friend who would stitch you up without asking too many questions. She worked at Cedars-Sinai, but today was her day off. Lucky her. Emily had a vacation house out in Rancho Santa Margarita, some quiet, out-of-the-way spot she used to escape the madness of the city. If anyone had a shot at riding this thing out, it was her. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Nothing. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. That wasn't like her. The thought of heading straight for Rancho crossed my mind, but I pushed it aside. I needed to be smart. First, I had to get home, lock things down, and grab my gear. No point running headfirst into chaos unprepared. I gritted my teeth and gripped the wheel tighter. Get home. Get ready. Then figure out what's next. My country house sat on the outskirts of LA, just far enough from the city to give me space, but close enough that I could still get to work within an hour. It wasn't much: 2 bedrooms, a reinforced security system, and enough land around it to spot trouble before it got too close. I pulled off the main road, rolled up my long driveway, and came to a stop. The place looked untouched. No broken windows, no signs of forced entry. Just the same old house, with the same old silence hanging over it. Still, I didn't take chances. I grabbed my Glock 19 and stepped out, scanning the yard. No movement. No sounds except for the faint wail of sirens from the city below. Satisfied, I moved to the house, unlocking the front door and sweeping the rooms methodically. Clear. I exhaled, then went back outside to pull my Toyota 4Runner into the garage. The moment the garage doors shut, I locked everything, windows, doors, even the deadbolts. If things were going to get bad, I wasn't going to make it easy for anyone to get inside. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, and tried Emily again. No answer. I fired off a quick text. The situation is terrible. If you're safe, text me back. If you need me, I'll come get you. Stay smart. Set the phone down. No reply. I moved to my storage closet and got to work. AR-15, short 10-inch barrel, collimator sight with a magnifier, and/PQ, 15 laser unit, and a Surefire flashlight mounted on the side. The first thing I did was screw on a silencer. Stealth was about to become a necessity. Glock 17, equipped with a collimator sight, flashlight, and an enlarged magazine for extra capacity. Glock 19, stock, nothing added. Simple, reliable, a solid backup. Shotgun, Mossberg 500 pump action, fitted with a collimator sight and a flashlight for low-light engagements. Body armor, a reinforced plate carrier with level 4 armor plates. It held 10 magazines for the AR-15, 2 tourniquets, 6 stun grenades, 2 smoke grenades. Combat belt. First aid kit. 3 pistol magazines. Holster for the Glock 17. Extra AR-15 magazine pouch, 20 rounds. Helmet. Night vision device with a thermal imaging attachment. Additional equipment. Thermal imaging scope for observation. By the time I finished gearing up, my equipment was laid out in 2 bags, one for weapons, one for survival. Everything was within reach. If I had to leave in a hurry, I could be out the door in under 5 minutes. I took a deep breath, rolling my shoulders. The weight of the situation was settling in. Outside, the city was unraveling. Gunshots, sirens, screams. I checked my phone again. Still nothing from Emily. Damn it. I rubbed my temples. I needed to think clearly. Needed to rest. No telling what tomorrow would bring. I stripped down, took a quick shower, and let the hot water wash away the tension creeping up my spine. When I stepped out, I grabbed my phone one last time and sent another text. Emily, call me ASAP. Then I set the phone on my nightstand, laid my AR-15 next to the bed, and let exhaustion take over. Outside, Los Angeles was dying. Inside, I closed my eyes and prepared for war. The ringing phone yanked me from the depths of sleep. My hand shot out, grabbing the device from the nightstand, my heart already hammering before I even saw the name on the screen. Emily. I answered instantly. Talk to me. Her voice was shaky, but she was alive. I'm okay. I made it to the house. Locked everything up. No power, but I have food and water. My gun's loaded, but I don't know if I can. If I have to. She cut herself off, breathing heavy. I pushed myself up from the bed, already reaching for my gear. Listen to me. You stay put. Don't make any noise. Don't turn on any lights. Don't open the door for anyone. She exhaled sharply. Are you coming? I'm coming. A pause. How long? I glanced at the clock. In normal conditions, Rancho Santa Margarita was 2 hours away. But these weren't normal conditions. LA was falling apart. Roads were clogged, people were panicking, and whatever was happening out there was spreading fast. I don't know, I admitted. Best case? 2 hours. Worst case? More. If I'm not there in 7, I swallowed. You're on your own. Silence. Then, got it. Stay low. Stay quiet. If you have to shoot, aim for the head. I know. The call ended. I moved with purpose, no wasted motion. First, I grabbed the 2 supply bags, one with weapons, ammo, and body armor, the other with food, water, and medical supplies, and hauled them to the garage. Then I started stacking essentials into the back of the Toyota 4Runner. Extra fuel canisters, in case I had to reroute. More ammo, always bring more than you think you need. Spare clothes, in case I got drenched in blood or worse. Maps and compass. GPS was going to be unreliable. Night vision and thermal scope. I wasn't taking chances after dark. With everything secured, I grabbed a 20L gas canister, unscrewed the cap, and began refueling. The world outside was chaos, and I wasn't about to be stranded in the middle of it. The distant sounds of sirens and gunfire echoed in the hills, a constant reminder that time was running out. I tightened the gas cap, threw the empty can into the trunk, and slammed the garage door shut. I climbed into the driver's seat, my AR-15 resting beside me. The mission was simple: get to Emily, get out, survive. I started the engine. The low rumble of the 4Runner filled the garage. One deep breath. I put it in gear and hit the road. Emily was waiting. As soon as I pulled onto the main road, I knew things were worse than I had imagined. I expected chaos. I expected traffic, abandoned cars, maybe some looters smashing up storefronts. What I didn't expect was hell on earth. Buildings were burning, thick plumes of black smoke rising into the sky, turning the afternoon sun into a sickly orange haze. Cars lay overturned, some still smoldering, others riddled with bullet holes. The once bustling streets of Los Angeles had become a graveyard of twisted metal and lifeless bodies. But the worst part wasn't the destruction. It was the silence between the screams. That heavy, unnatural quiet. The kind that settled after the worst had already happened. I gripped the wheel tighter, my heart pounding. I need to move. Fast. I had planned on taking the I-5 south, then cutting east toward Rancho Santa Margarita. Under normal circumstances, 2 hours tops. But these weren't normal circumstances. The freeway was a parking lot of abandoned vehicles, some with doors hanging open, others stained with bloody handprints. People must have tried to run, but where were they now? No way I was getting through there. I took a detour, cutting through side streets, avoiding major intersections, but that had its own problems. Everywhere I turned, I saw more horror. A mother and child, crouched behind a broken-down SUV, eyes wide with terror. A man dragging himself across the asphalt, one leg torn to the bone, reaching out to no one. Gunfire in the distance, quick, sharp bursts, someone was still fighting. I had to keep moving. The 405 South was my next best option. If I could make it through Orange County, I could cut across Mission Viejo, then push into Rancho Santa Margarita. It'd be longer, but I didn't have a choice. I pushed the accelerator, weaving through debris, scanning every alley, every rooftop. This city was turning into a war zone. I had just turned onto a side street when I spotted movement. A small group, 3 people, running full speed. A man in a torn button-up, an older woman, and a teenage girl. Their faces were contorted with fear, stumbling, exhausted. Behind them, a pack of infected was gaining ground fast. They weren't just stumbling around like in the movies. These things moved. Their heads snapped toward their prey like predators locking onto a fresh kill. Their bodies jerked forward, unnatural, erratic, but fast. I had seconds to decide. I slammed the brakes. "Get in," I shouted through the open window. The man hesitated for a split second before yanking the door open. He shoved the older woman and the girl inside first, then dove in himself, slamming the door shut just as the first infected reached the vehicle. One of them threw itself against the hood, snarling, teeth snapping at the glass. Another pounded on the back window, its bloody hands smearing across the surface. I didn't hesitate. The SUV lurched forward, knocking one of the infected clean off its feet. The others gave chase for a moment, but I was already gone. The man in the passenger seat was panting hard. Jesus. Jesus Christ. "Thank you. Save it," I said, keeping my eyes on the road. "Where were you headed?" The older woman sobbed in the back. The teenage girl, her daughter, probably clutched her hand. We don't know," the man admitted. "We were just running." Of course they were. There was nowhere safe. I exhaled. "I can get you as far as Mission Viejo. After that, you're on your own." They nodded. They didn't argue. They knew the world had changed. Everywhere I looked, Los Angeles was tearing itself apart. I passed. A police barricade, completely overrun, shattered squad cars, blood-stained riot shields. A grocery store being looted, people shoving supplies into bags while gunshots rang out nearby. A man hanging out of a broken window, screaming for help as something dragged him back inside. I had to force myself to focus. I couldn't save everyone. The road ahead was getting worse. Blocked intersections, wrecks, entire sections of the city grid locked down. I made the decision to veer onto a service road, taking the back way into Long Beach before cutting east. It was risky, but faster. The people I had picked up stayed quiet. The girl whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Are we going to die?" Her mother pulled her close. "Not today, baby. Not today." I clenched my jaw. I had one mission: get to Emily. But the world was crumbling around me, and I wasn't sure if there was going to be anything left when I got there. The Toyota 4Runner thundered down the empty side road, dodging wreckage and bodies, the city behind me turning into nothing more than a distant funeral pyre. Smoke curled into the sky from different directions. Somewhere, everything was burning. The family I had picked up remained silent. The father sat stiffly in the passenger seat, his hands still shaking. The girl curled up against her mother in the back, her wide, haunted eyes staring at nothing. I kept my focus on the road. I couldn't afford to break down now. But in my gut, I knew Los Angeles was gone. Ahead, the road cut east toward Long Beach. If I could push through, I could make it to Mission Viejo in an hour. Maybe less. I tried not to think about what I'd see along the way. I turned onto a stretch of road that should have been empty. It wasn't. A white pickup truck was parked sideways, blocking both lanes. Smoke rose from the hood, and a body lay sprawled near the driver's side door, face down, unmoving. Something about it felt wrong. I slowed the 4Runner, scanning the area. Too quiet. The father shifted beside me. Something's not right. I was already gripping my Glock 17, my eyes flicking to the alleyways flanking the street. This was a setup. The second I realized it, a shot rang out. Crack. The windshield spiderwebbed, the round barely missing my head. Down, I yelled, shoving the gear into reverse. From the shadows, figures emerged. 5 of them, maybe 6, rifles up, moving fast. Bandits. I hit the gas pedal. A little girl screamed. Her mother covered her with her body, sobbing. Another shot pierced the side window, too close. In one quick movement, I raised the gun and squeezed the trigger. Pop, 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 pop. The shots were accurate and deadly. One of the attackers instantly fell, clutching his throat. Another staggered back. The rest of the bandits started to hesitate, and that was their mistake. I stepped on the gas, breaking through a gap in their barrage. A pickup scraped the side of my SUV, but I made it through. The last thing I saw in the rearview mirror was the rest of the bandits firing at us, in our backs. I pulled onto a dirt road near an abandoned gas station, my knuckles white on the wheel. The mother was crying. The father kept muttering, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus." I killed the engine. Everybody okay? The mother just nodded, holding her daughter tight. The father wiped the sweat from his face. "You saved our lives." I exhaled, my adrenaline still spiking. Yeah, well, I need to figure out our next move. We couldn't take the freeway. Too dangerous, too many people losing their minds. The main roads were a war zone. I needed a new route. I pulled out my paper map, tracing a line south. If I could cut through the industrial district, I could reach the Santa Ana River Trail, a long, winding back road that stretched toward Rancho Santa Margarita. It wasn't meant for vehicles, but these weren't normal times. I made my decision. I turned to the father. "This is where we split up." His face paled. "What? No, you can't just." I cut him off. "I saved you. I got you this far. But I have someone waiting for me." The mother looked at me, her eyes full of gratitude and understanding. She knew. The father hesitated, then finally nodded. "Okay." I pulled a 9mm Glock 19 from my bag and pressed it into his hands. "Take this. Keep them safe. And don't hesitate." He swallowed hard. "I won't." They climbed out of the SUV. The mother turned one last time. "Thank you." I gave her a nod. Then I turned the key, shifted into drive, and peeled away. I had a mission to finish. The Santa Ana River Trail was never meant for cars, but it didn't matter. Every shadow seemed like a threat. The sun was sinking lower and lower, and the world was getting darker. Emily was still waiting. I had to get to her, no matter what it took. The Toyota 4Runner hummed steadily beneath me, its engine a low, reliable growl. The Santa Ana River Trail had been quiet for the last stretch, too quiet. Then I heard it. Screams. And gunfire. Not panicked, erratic shots. These were controlled, deliberate, predatory. I knew that sound. An execution. I pulled off the dirt path and rolled the SUV into a ditch behind an old concrete barrier, killing the engine. The world outside was changing, but predators remained the same. Human nature didn't break down as fast as society did. I grabbed my AR-15, flicked the safety off, and moved out. Silent. Methodical. The screams had stopped. I stuck to the shadows, creeping forward through the brush. The sun was sinking, but I wasn't relying on the light. I brought down my helmet-mounted night vision, scanning ahead. The thermal attachment kicked in, revealing the heat signatures before I even laid eyes on them. 4 men, armed, laughing. In front of them, 2 figures, a young man and a woman, on their knees. Terrified, one of the bandits pressed a rifle to the guy's head, while another dragged the girl by her hair, taunting her. I could already see how this would end. Not today. I raised my AR, 15, and steadied my breathing. I exhaled slowly. Then I pulled the trigger. 3 muffled shots. The first bullet pierced the skull of the man who was holding the boy at gunpoint. He fell down instantly. The second found its mark in the chest of another man, who staggered, blood gushing from a torn lung. The third bullet hit the throat of the third bandit, silencing him before he could call for help. The last one, the one holding the girl, froze, his brain trying to figure out what was happening. I didn't give him a single chance. I closed the distance in a matter of seconds and put a bullet between his eyes before he could even raise his rifle. The clearing was deadly silent. For bodies, for murders, before the world fell apart, I would have hesitated. But not now. The girl fell down, sobbing. The young man was gasping for breath, his eyes riveted on the dead bodies surrounding them. I scanned them quickly. No bites. They were clean. Are you okay? I asked, my voice sharp. The guy swallowed hard. Why, yes. I think. I cut the ties on the girl's wrists, then handed her a half-empty water bottle from my backpack. She took it with trembling hands. Where were you going? I asked. The boy could barely speak. To my uncle's place. The lake forest. We thought it was safe there. Then go, I said. Stay off the roads. Drive fast, don't make any noise. They hesitated, then nodded. The girl mumbled a weak, thank you. I was already walking away. I had my own mission. I slid back into the Toyota 4Runner, checking my surroundings before restarting the engine. Then I flipped on the radio, scanning through static until I caught a signal. Widespread collapse. Authorities are overwhelmed. Unknown infection spreading rapidly. Do not engage the infected unless necessary. If you can hear this, avoid major roads. Stay armed. Stay moving. Then, a chilling statement. Los Angeles has fallen. I gritted my teeth. Emily was still out there. I floored the gas. I wasn't going to let her die. The road was brutal. Checkpoints, fires, broken cars, and bodies everywhere. The city was gone. The world I knew was gone. But none of this mattered. Because I was here. I slowed the Toyota 4Runner as I approached Emily's vacation home. It was a one-story ranch-style house that stood on the edge of a forest. It looked untouched, but that didn't mean it was safe. I pulled over to the side of the driveway without turning off the engine. Then I took my AR-15, checked the weapon, and got out. The house was dark and silent, but I knew Emily. She was waiting. I moved toward the front door, keeping my weapon raised. Knocking was a risk, but I wasn't about to get shot by my own friend. I tapped the door 3 times, firm and steady. For a few seconds, nothing. Then, the locks clicked open, and the door swung inward just enough for me to see the barrel of a .357 Magnum revolver aimed at my chest. Emily. She was pale, her blonde hair pulled back into a messy ponytail. Her eyes were wide, exhausted. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then, she exhaled sharply and dropped the gun. Oh my God, she whispered. Then she threw her arms around me. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I told you I'd come, I muttered. She pulled back, her hands gripping my arms, searching my face like she didn't believe I was real. You're late, she said, but there was no anger in her voice. Only relief. Emily's house was in decent shape, but the power was out. She had candles lit, but they were placed low, out of sight from the windows. Smart. I went straight into lockdown mode, securing the house, while she followed me. Anyone been by here? I asked. No, she said. Not that I know of. I double-checked the doors, windows, and blinds, then set up noise traps at the entrances, simple tricks, like a stack of cans near the door. If someone tried to break in, we'd hear it. Emily leaned against the kitchen counter, rubbing her face. I can't believe you made it. I tossed my gear onto the table, then grabbed a bottle of water from my pack and handed it to her. She took it, drinking greedily. When she set it down, she looked at me seriously. What now? I laid the map out across the table, marking key locations. Emily leaned over it, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes were sharp. She took a breath. I got a message before the power went out. From a secure frequency. I frowned. What kind of message? She looked at me. Santa Catalina. They say it's safe. That caught me off guard. Safe? How? She tapped the map, pointing at the island off the coast. Apparently, the virus didn't spread there the same way. They managed to kill all the infected before it could get out of control. No outbreaks. No chaos. They're securing it. Setting up a quarantine zone. I narrowed my eyes. Who's they? Emily shook her head. I don't know. The Coast Guard? The military? Survivors? The message wasn't clear, but it wasn't a distress call. It was an invitation. I exhaled, thinking fast. If it was true, an island was the best possible place to be. No reinforcements for the infected. No mass hordes. If they had supplies and organization, it was a real chance at survival. But we had one problem. How do we get there? I asked. Emily didn't hesitate. There's a boat docked at Dana Point. My dad used to take me sailing. I know how to pilot it. I blinked. That was a hell of a revelation. You can sail? She nodded. Yeah. He taught me everything. I can get us to the island. I looked at the map again, considering the risks. Dana Point was about 20 miles away. In normal times, we'd be there in under 30 minutes. No? That road would be a death trap. All right, I said finally. Then we go to Dana Point. Emily exhaled, her shoulders slumping with relief. We're really doing this? I met her gaze. Yeah, we are. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was escape. We checked our weapons, packed the essentials, and planned our route. There was a dead silence around us, but we both knew it wasn't so. The silence was deceptive somewhere out there. People were hunting, fighting, dying. Inside the house, Emily and I packed up our gear, checked our weapons, and thought about the plan. We leave at 3 a.m., I said. We're moving fast, not stopping for anything. We'll be at Dana Point before dawn. Emily nodded as she stuffed additional magazines of ammunition into her bag. And once we're on the water, we'll wait until it's gray before we move out. That was the key. Use the darkness to move, use the dawn to navigate. I can handle the boat. Just get us to the dock in one piece. I smiled. No problem. We moved out quietly, keeping low, weapons ready. The Toyota 4Runner was already loaded with supplies, fuel, and weapons. I slid into the driver's seat, Emily riding shotgun, her .357 Magnum in her lap. I turned the key. The engine rumbled to life, muffled by the night. I checked my watch. 3:01 a.m. This was it. No more waiting. No more second-guessing. I put the SUV in gear and hit the road. Dana Point or death. The Toyota 4Runner rolled through the ruined streets, its headlights off, guided only by the green glow of my night vision device. The darkness made it impossible to see with the naked eye, but through the NVG, the world was painted in ghostly shades of green and black. Emily and I moved fast but carefully. Stopping every few minutes, we'd listen, checking for movement, voices, the unnatural groans of the infected. Nothing. We pushed forward. Then, a few kilometers down the road, I saw them. 3 military vehicles, 2 Humvees, and an LMDV transport truck, sat parked near the road. No lights. No movement. But a few meters ahead of the convoy, I spotted a man crouching, scanning the road. He was wearing night vision, and he was waving at me. I slowed the vehicle, my grip tightening on the wheel. A trap? A setup? Emily tensed beside me. What do we do? I exhaled. We drive up. Slow. Hands visible. I rolled the 4Runner up, keeping my movements deliberate and non-threatening. As we got closer, the soldiers came into view. These weren't ordinary troops. They were special forces. High-end gear, body armor, advanced weapons. These guys weren't just grunts. They were operators. One of them, the one who had waved us and stepped forward. Tall, calm, eyes sharp even in the darkness. I rolled down my window slightly, keeping my rifle visible but pointed down. Friendly. He studied me for half a second before nodding. You military? Private security. Headed for Dana Point. His expression didn't change. That right? I nodded. Yeah. And I'm guessing you're headed the same way. A pause. Then he smirked. Damn right. While the operators finished changing a shredded tire, I got the details. They had been running a long-range recon mission when the outbreak hit. By the time they got the order to fall back, LA was gone. Now, they were trying to break through the city and reach the piers. They had the same plan as us, evacuation by boat. The military's pulling back, the team leader, Captain Miles, explained. Most bases are compromised. The government's shifting to island fortifications. And Santa Catalina? I asked. He nodded. Confirmed safe. They're locking it down tight. Only way in is by boat, and only if you're clean. That was exactly what Emily and I had planned. Now, we had backup. Miles gave me a long look. You want to roll with us, we'll get you there in one piece. We'll cover your boat while you push out. I didn't hesitate. Deal. The convoy was back on the road, rolling fast toward the city. I kept the 4Runner tight behind them, Emily gripping her pistol in the passenger seat. She exhaled. This might actually work. I kept my eyes on the road. Yeah, I muttered. Might. But first, we had to make it through hell. The convoy roared through the ruined city, engines growling, headlights flicking through smoke-choked streets. The two Humvees led the charge, M240 machine guns chattering, ripping through the infected that crowded the intersections. Bodies jerked and collapsed, torn apart by precise bursts of military firepower. Behind them, the LMDV transport truck rumbled, carrying supplies and extra ammo. My Toyota 4Runner stuck close to the rear, Emily gripping her .357 Magnum, scanning every alleyway. The city was a war zone. Buildings burned. Zombies lurched from every doorway, every shattered window. The dead swarmed like a rising tide, drawn by the sounds of gunfire and engines. The docks loomed ahead, barely visible through the smoke. The bridge was the only way across. Miles' voice crackled over the radio. All right, listen up. We're splitting here. You take the parking lot straight ahead, we'll pull left. Make as much noise as possible. Understood, I responded, gripping the wheel. Just as we hit the bridge, the truck slammed to a stop. The driver bailed out, sprinting for the nearest Humvee. Seconds later, both Humvees peeled left, gunfire erupting in all directions. The infected poured after them, drawn to the thunder of machine guns. I didn't look back. I floored it, racing across the parking lot toward the docks. We walked to the edge of the pier and the ocean stretched out before us. Emily jumped out first and ran to our boat. A 35-foot motor cruiser docked at the pier and ready to go. I grabbed my AR-15, turned around, and opened fire. The dead were coming. First a dozen, then 2 dozen. Hungry, relentless. 3 shots to the head, then 4. But they kept coming. Behind me, Emily was pushing supplies onto the deck, tossing bags into the cabin. I quickly reloaded as one of the infected rushed off the dock. A clean shot to the skull took him out. Then, behind me. Boom. A fireball exploded, shaking the docks. The bridge. I turned around and saw the burning wreckage falling into the water. The truck was destroyed. Miles had blown up the bridge. The infected could no longer cross. Emily shoved the throttle forward, and the boat lurched into motion, breaking through the waves. I fired my last shots, then turned, leaping aboard as the dock disappeared behind us. We were out. The dead were still screaming on shore, but we were gone. Then, from the mist, 2 combat boats appeared. .50 caliber guns chattered, cutting down the remaining infected along the pier. One of the boats turned toward us. A soldier waved, signaling us to follow. Emily gave me a look. Yes, we made it. I exhaled, shouldering my rifle. Yeah, we did. We reached Santa Catalina just as the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Armed guards waited on the docks, weapons ready. The moment we stepped off the boat, we were searched, scanned, cleared. Then, one of the commanders stepped forward, a tall man in a combat vest, grizzled, experienced. He studied me. You're not just some guy running for his life, he said. You know how to handle yourself. I didn't answer. Just waited. The commander smirked. It's some rest. When you wake up, we'll talk. He turned, nodding toward the island. We need guys like you. Emily nudged me. Looks like you got a job offer. I glanced at the calm ocean, the secure walls, the soldiers standing guard. For the first time in 24 hours, I allowed myself to breathe. We'll see, I said. We had survived the first day, but the fight was just beginning.